the beginning, we've said academic conferences are too expensive. They're often held in hotels. They don't need to be. We'd like to do that camp on the cheap. And so we sort of put it in our rules from the beginning. That camp must be free. We've had to alter that just a little bit to say we would like you to have that camps that are free, but you're allowed to strongly encourage donations of up to $30. I think we're adopting kind of the art museum model where they have that, you know, guilty donation box up front, and if you don't donate in that, you know, you feel a little bad, but you can do that. And so it's interesting to me that we've had to do that. Certainly one of the fears about putting open content on the web, creating things that are free and open, there's a great deal of joy that comes from doing that and from knowing that you're giving people access to things that they might not otherwise have access to. At the same time, it takes money, and where does the money come from? So that's been our little compromise with that camp, is to say, okay, it doesn't have to be free. You can charge up to about $30 if you must, for food, usually, food and coffee. And we think at that price, it's still a good value. Okay, publishing openly on the web. There are a number of studies. I encourage you to, sorry about that. I encourage you to find them if you have not already. But there are a number of studies that reveal, sorry about that. Is there Firefox on here? Okay. There are a number of studies that show that if you do publish online openly for free, you're likely to be cited more. We've seen in the DS-106 presentation all kinds of ways in which publishing online increases the profile of almost anything you put up there. I gave a presentation at MLA in January called "Your Twitter Followers and Facebook Friends Won't Read Your Peer-Reviewed Article If They Have to Pay for It, and Neither Will Strangers," which is an untwitterable title, more or less deliberate. And despite the sort of negativity in the title, this is actually a very pro-open access article. So, you know, it's a pro-open access piece. And I'll take you through this slightly, you know, real quickly. The basic story behind this is that, you know, I was on a panel called the Open Professoriate, which again was all about the virtues of being open online. Being, you know, doing professorship, particularly research, openly online. And it was particularly useful to do this at the MLA, where certainly not everybody is a convert. And so there were some tremendous presentations, and my own presentation was positive about why you would want to put your things openly on the internet, because it increases your readership. There was an article done by a couple of library students examining specifically the use of social media in increasing citations to traditional scholarly articles. And I gave the example of, you know, this is the article itself, showing that, yes, scholars do use Twitter to link to peer-reviewed articles. When I tweeted a link to this article, which is itself peer-reviewed, a piece of peer-reviewed library science literature, you know, 118 people went and read that article. And it itself was openly available online. So this is one of the articles showing that, yes, people are using these open web platforms to broaden the audience for peer-reviewed scholarship. And it itself, in a sort of meta move, became proof of that. Because this article was openly available online, in a PDF, a number of people read it. I wanted to stop on this slide. The rest of this presentation, which is on my site if you'd like to look at it, is actually a story about an article of mine which is not publicly available online, and about how when I tweeted the link to that, there were I think it was 6 people in my Twitter stream and my Facebook stream who tried to read it and couldn't because it was behind a paywall. And of those 6 readers, at least 2 of them were not my friends exactly. They were legitimate readers of that article, like a legitimate audience for that reader. And again, 6 readers for a very obscure piece of literary scholarship about the Villanelle is not so bad. But what I actually wanted to stop and mention here, and again, I will evangelize about open access for a long time. I encourage you to read this presentation and all the many others showing why it is a very good thing to publish your research online. But I will mention that there's one thing that I think is both awesome and a little worrying about publishing scholarship openly online. And that's kind of represented by this slide here, which is metrics. What I think is amazing about publishing online is that you attract new readers, and what's more, you can measure those readers. You can engage with those readers. You can talk to them about your article, which is great. That's what journals were originally for. They're so slow now that the conversation is sort of like, trying to radio to Mars, so there isn't a whole lot of conversation going on. One of the immense benefits of publishing openly online is this ability to have conversations either in social media or in comments on a blog or whatever. What's kind of great from a more egocentric point of view is that you can measure the number of reads, not just, or get some approximation of the number of reads. Ordinarily, statistics for whether or not your work is having any impact come from journal impact factors and citations. I'm sure you all know this, that when Google Scholar or many of the databases have this capacity to count the number of times your article has been cited or book has been cited in someone else's article or book. And those numbers can play a part in tenure and promotion. Even when there aren't such numbers available, often people will use as metrics the notion that the impact factor of the journal. So the article that I published here was published in Victorian Studies. Humanities journals don't always have impact factors in the way that social sciences and science journals do, but they do have reputation, and that tends to be a kind of a measure of whether or not you deserve tenure in a lot of tenure and promotion committees. But the thing is that publishing online, particularly openly online, means that there are all kinds of metrics about who's reading your article and how many people are reading your article. Not just citing it, but reading it. Now, this is great in the sense that you can make a case that you're making an impact. This is also worrisome because there are people who will use such numbers to determine the quality of your work. Right? So, as I said, my article that I Twittered a link to got 6 potential readers, and I thought that was a great number. I really did. I was like, but the fact that it was 6 was also a little worrying. Some of you may have been aware, reading recently about down at the University of Texas, they've done some metrics on scholarly productivity, which a lot of the scholars are saying are very simplistic. So that's my fear about that's my chief fear about publishing openly online, is that metrics that are available through publishing online may be misused. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about another aspect of putting things online. Shakespeare Quarterly is doing an experiment with open peer review. Shakespeare Quarterly is an amazing journal. It's a very highly ranked journal in Shakespeare studies. And they, here's the bit about open review. Here's a piece of higher education that is going online, that is being made completely open and visible where it wasn't before. And I happen to know a little bit about how this is going. Shakespeare Quarterly has done this before. And there have been articles written about how it went. They've decided to do it again. I wanted to share one sort of particular point with you, which is that the guest editor of this edition, who's doing a great deal of work to enable this open peer review process, has mentioned that all of the fears about open peer review have come from the reviewers and not the authors. All of the authors said, absolutely, online peer review, or, I don't know with what degree of enthusiasm, but authors were very, very willing to have their drafts of their work put online and commented on by reviewers. Ordinarily, of course, peer review happens pretty much on a kind of a one-to-one. You send in an article in some Word document or something, and you get comments back on it from peer reviewers. In the humanities journals, double-blind peer review is not as common as it is in the sciences and social sciences. Nevertheless, a lot of peer review is often anonymous. And that struck me as very interesting, that the resistance to this open peer review, where everyone is writing comments by name, came from the reviewers and not the authors, because it suggests that those reviewers probably have some of the same fears that I do about the discourse being too courteous. If you read through these comments, there are fantastic discussions going on here about the articles, which you can't do in the print journal, which you can't even do in the online journal, but you can do on this platform. Being a humanist, I think that having a great discussion is a great thing intrinsically, just by itself. Nevertheless, it's also the case that the fact that it's a great discussion may be a problem. Is it actually a good thing if people can't say negative things, don't feel comfortable saying negative things about articles? It's a concern that I have. I think that it's probably a Perils of Pauline concern. I think that probably courteous discussion of work online is better, and that the absolute value of seeing scholars talk about scholarship can be very useful. These sites where the commenting happens are kept up for quite a while. They are open, as you can see. Anybody can read this. I can imagine showing these to students to show them how peer review happens. I think that's a good thing. Now, some of the other concerns, fears, perils of publishing openly online have to do with theft of your intellectual property. People are worried, sometimes this happens with student work as well, people are worried that if they put their work up online, people will plagiarize it. I think we could talk about that. I think it's a little bit of a Perils of Pauline fear, or if it is a legitimate fear, it's in a way not my problem, which is maybe not the best attitude to take. But I think that there's a different kind of theft that may be, and a quote-unquote theft, that may be a little more worrying. And by doing that, to explain what I mean by this kind of theft as a peril, I want to show you that, I've put my own dissertation online for free, openly, because I believe in that kind of thing, in a number of places. I put it online in this comment press installation. It's as a PDF on my website. I uploaded it to the Internet Archive. I put it on Scribd. Of course, you can get it through ProQuest, Dissertation Abstracts. That's not free and open on the web, but I've put my dissertation online in a number of places. The title of my dissertation is Refrain Again, The Return of the Villanelle. And what you can see, Google does a great job. It's bringing up, all of the most authoritative versions of my dissertation in the top results. I think I also deliberately uploaded it here to openthesis.org. If you click on page 5,